Hey, Nir has a question.
Yeah, first let me say this was fascinating. I'm so excited to read the book. I just th this is so relevant for the work I'm doing right now. And I have a question of a component that I thought maybe was missing and probably you're addressing it in your book. And that's the place of the exegetical tradition and the Atakata, and I'll say a little bit more about it. Because you make this interesting argument that even though I'm kind of working very differently than you, I do work on kind of comparative stuff and looking at the Gandhari and looking at the Chinese, but I'm interested in the differences and I'm interested in showing that these are literary texts, much like you are. And when I think of what I'm doing, is not it has less to do with looking for the original, but more of looking at these literary texts as somehow different, both in genre and in what they're trying to do, than the kind of exegetical materials that come later and have their own agenda. So
Mhm.
I think one way of thinking of the value of the comparative project is how it's separated from the kind of later exegetical materials, because at times, you know, what you beautifully show in these sutras is something that not doesn't necessarily appear in the hermeneutical and kind of exegetical material that come later on. So it gives these sutras, you know, somehow their own kind of importance and their own merit and value. And instead of, you know, giving up on the entire canon and just reading the Visuddhimagga because it already has everything that we need to know, I think this is an incentive to read the sutras again.
Mhm.
And in that sense, I don't see it as something that we shouldn't be doing in multiple languages or as a comparative project as well. So I thought you could say a little bit more about how you understand your reading of the sutras and their relationship to the later kind of commentarial tradition.
Okay, thanks. That's a great question, and that's a whole new world that I'd be happy to collaborate in exploring. Um, I don't know enough about Atakata really. It's doing a lot of stuff from what I see, and I don't. Um, I mean, I think, like, we call it commentary. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that really works. I mean, it needs to be a very thick term, the storytelling, and it's a different Pali. It's a different it's a different approach. It's a very, very different approach. And like for me, one of the big questions is like, how old is it, and how do they? I mean, because they play together, so there are really a lot of things to unpack. And I've started looking at this, but I mean, so just to say that I'm very much. I mean, I appreciate this comment on the value of comparison. Um, once we let go of the essentialist assumption that it's going to take us to the original text, then actually, if, for example, we look at this kind of method of elaboration, let's forget the meditative stuff, okay? I was just trying that out today. For the textual reading, I think it's very, very solid. They're elaborating upon the text. The texts are not the end product. They're a certain stage in the creation, and then they create more texts, and they kind of bounce back with the living tradition. Okay, it'd be very interesting to see a Chinese or a Gandhari version of the Salayatana Samyutta. I've talked with my research assistant and reads Chinese to do that. Rich Solomon and I were also kind of beginning to talk. I talked to the Koroshti Club a couple of weeks ago, and there they felt actually. I mean, also just enough of this kind of trying to get back to the ur text and to appreciate the inner dynamism of each tradition, which is going in a new direction, and that can be compared. I'm completely interested in that, but I mean, I can't do it. I mean, I think it's just like it's such a multi-dimensional world, just the Pali. So I get interested, and sometimes I check other stuff, and it can be meaningful, but I feel I kind of need to understand the tradition from within itself first. I started Chinese. It's, boy, that's a pretty serious project. But we'll learn that too. But it's kind of like it's like a fountain. There's more and more coming out always from within the suttas, and also what I'm more interested in is also the relation to Vinaya, which is also, or Orta Abhidhamma further down the road. That's something also which is very important, and I have some things to say about that, like initial comment.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
So we have questions
thanks
from
very much.